The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, had a little technical difficulty there. Sorry about the delay in starting. I'd like to thank you for coming to the design webinar here today. We're actually going to be discussing how to use Google Earth Pro with Microstation. Troy Woodyard has been gracious enough to present this for us, and we thank him for that. Actually, just a couple things I want to talk about before we start the webinar. We actually have some upcoming webinars. One is on July 22nd. I'll actually be discussing working days, which is a tool we'll be using to actually organize how long a schedule we can use on a project, which actually be presented by Roy Sturgill, who's with the University of Kentucky. That should be a valuable webinar for us. In August, we'll actually have an introduction to Clearview, which is something that KYTC has been actually using for a while now to actually organize information and workflows and whatnot. And that'll actually be presented by Jamie Anderson. So I want to thank you both, Roy Sturgill and Jamie, if you're here today, for presenting those in the future. Another thing is, if you want to actually watch the previous webinars, they are posted on YouTube and can be found on the KYTC Highway Design webpage in the resources section under software and support. If you actually Google KYTC software and support, I believe it'll take you directly to the software and support page where you can find those webinars. It's pretty nice to be able to go back and look at those previous webinars for anything you may have missed during the webinar or just missed the webinar altogether. Also, if you have any questions about Microstation, inroads, project-wise, and the like, you can actually email us at kytccadsupport@ky.gov. We'll answer any and all questions we can for you if you email us there. Just a couple of reminders, just because of some issues that we've had where people haven't been able to get their professional development hours after attending webinars. You actually have to attend the entire webinar before you can get your professional development hours. Also, one of the things you can do is, if you don't watch on your computer individually and are not registered, you can watch as a group on one computer, say in a conference room or whatnot, as long as you have a sign-in sheet. You have to sign in and actually show that you were there. With that sign-in sheet, if you ever audited, because we are on the honor system, you can actually get credit for those professional development hours. Unfortunately, we won't receive a certificate in that case unless you're registered, but you can show that you attended the webinar. Also, please don't forget to participate in our survey at the end of the webinar. We really appreciate your time in doing so, because it gives us invaluable information to actually help us decide what upcoming webinars we'll do, subjects, and whatnot. So right now we'll actually do some poll questions. Get the first one up here. Did you actually attend the previous highway design webinar? Wait till the voting gets up here close to. All right, looks like we've got about over 80% who have voted there, and it looks like 50-50 here have actually attended the last webinar. We'll actually ask another one here. Have they ever attended a KYTC webinar, and how often? Okay, we got about 80% participation there. And looks like about 42% of you, or a majority of you, actually seen at least 5 webinars, which is good. It means we're getting it out there and getting it to you. And 25%, which is the next highest, have seen 5 to 10 times. That's excellent. We're glad you're attending, and we appreciate your viewing of these webinars, and we hope that they're helping. Oops. All right, without much ado, we'll actually send this to Troy, and he'll get to presenting for us. Okay, Troy, have you got it?
I've got it.
All right. Good luck.
All right, cool. So this morning we're going to look at Google Earth and Microstation, and it can be a pretty useful tool for some of the design work that we're doing. So our agenda this morning, first I'll show you there's a couple things special as far as the setup goes for Google Earth Pro, which is now free. So you get a few extra options in the Pro version. So and they've just given out free licenses for that. So but there's a few special things in the setup that you need to do to make sure it integrates correctly with Microstation. And then we'll look at getting Microstation Linework into Google Earth Pro. So if you want to get your plans or any kind of graphics that you have in Microstation, if you want to get those over into Google Earth, we'll show you how to do that, and then go through a few of the settings that you need to make sure you have right before you do that. And then sometimes the Google Earth Pro imagery is quite a bit better than, or better resolution anyway, than our 1 meter statewide stuff. So it may be useful for you to know how to get the Google imagery into Microstation. So we'll look at those things this morning. As far as the setup goes, you can go to the Google, you can just search for Google Earth Pro and go to their download page. But the thing that I wanted to point out when you get the Pro version is, this is just a screenshot, but if you see here it says latest version 7.1, that's what it will default to. But you need to get version 7.0. It's a legacy version. So if you already have Google Earth Pro and you just did the default install and you want to be able to use it with Microstation, you probably need to uninstall that and reinstall version 7. What the problem is with the imagery. When you go to the Microstation tool to capture the Google Earth image, you click the button and it just doesn't do anything in version 7.1. So it's a known issue. Some of our consultants alerted us to that, and I've talked to Bentley about it. So just make sure you get that version when you download it, the legacy version 7.0. And then Google Earth is free now, and it may or may not ask you for a license key. I've installed it on 2 computers, and the first one it did not, and then the next one it did. If it does, Google asks you to use your email address for the username, and the password is GEP free, and they have it, I have not tried it in lowercase, but they have it listed in all caps on their website. So I'll give you a second to write that down. GEP free, I assume that means Google Earth Pro free, if it helps you remember it, if you don't have something to write with right now. So when you download it, once again, just use your email address and GEP free for the password, and that'll get you set up with Google Earth. So that's sort of the housekeeping of how you get Google Earth Pro on your computer to get it ready to work with Microstation. So we'll jump in and talk about how to get our Microstation graphics into Google Earth Pro. There are a few issues that can come up. I guess the first thing you need to make sure you have right is that you have a coordinate system assigned and that it is the correct coordinate system. And then I was importing and exporting to Google Earth for a long time before I realized that there was an options box that actually did things. So I'll show you the options box, and I had some real backwards ways of getting it to do things I wanted it to do because I didn't know I had an options box. So I'll show you a few of those options that'll hopefully make it easier on you. And then default line styles don't show up when you bring it into Google Earth. There's a toggle to get your custom line styles, like your ditch lines and guardrail, to come in and show up correctly. But all it does is it drops your line styles down to their basic components, and the default line styles are undroppable, so your disturb limits won't show up. They'll show up as a solid purple line instead of a dashed purple line. So if that really bothers you, you could come up with some workaround to get you know, an array by line or something to follow the purple line. I usually just don't fool with it because most of the time when we're doing this Google Earth stuff, it's for a property owner or a public meeting or something, and they're not familiar with our line styles anyway, so you can just label it and tell them what it is, and it seems to work okay. Lastly, if you have, we don't use datum factors too often anymore, but there are some legacy projects that you'll still run into that have a datum factor, and if a project has a datum factor and you don't make some corrections for that, then it'll come in the same county, but won't really be accurate. So you know, if your project comes in Iowa, you probably have the wrong coordinate system. If it comes in 20 feet in the wrong direction, you probably have a datum factor that that you haven't adjusted for. So I'll jump into Microstation now and show you a few of these things. This is a job, it's about a mile long, that we worked on, and we used Google Earth for a stakeholder meeting. So on here I've just got some proposed graphics, and then I've got the existing survey and proposed right-of-way line, stuff like that. So all this stuff will come in to Google Earth. If you snap to it, you can see that these are 3D elements. They can be 3D, they cannot be 3D, whatever you want to do. That's elevation 0. But anyway, I'll show you a few of the Google Earth tools at this point. So I've already got it open, but there's a toolbar called the geographic toolbar, and that's where you're going to do most of this stuff, 99% of the stuff. If you go to tools and then scroll down to geographic, and then I like to just open it as a toolbox. You can select each of the commands here if you don't like to have a bunch of toolboxes open, but I like to use the toolbox. So same commands, but that's how you get to it. Tools, geographic. And then once you get the toolbox open, like most Google toolboxes, we kind of start on the left. So the most important thing here is the geographic coordinate system. So if you click that, you can see that I have Kentucky single zone attached. That should come in our seed file. If you're using our most up-to-date seed file, it should be up-to-date with single zone. If your project's not in single zone, or if you have an old seed file with, I don't know, some different coordinate system, or if you somehow you lost your coordinate system, you have to have this, and it has to be correct for Google Earth to know where this is in the world. So if you don't have something, or you have something that's not in line with your project or whatever, you can go here to this little button here, select geographic coordinate system. It's right there. And then I've got some favorites here. I've got single zone, north zone, southern zone. But if you don't see them, you can just drill down through library, projected. I think we're in North America, and United States of America, Kentucky, and then here is north zone, south zone, single zone. So that's how you can, and then you can just hit OK and it'll select it. I'm going to cancel it because I've already got the one attached that I want. But if you need to attach a coordinate system, that's how you do it. So I'm already set up, so I'm good. The next thing I want to do is show you the settings box. So if you go over here to this button, it's the next one from the right, almost to the very end, Google Earth settings. And we'll just kind of work down through this this settings menu, and I try to explain a few things that I've been able to figure out with it to make sure that these lines come in correctly. So Google Earth version, the options are 3 and 4. I think we have version 7, so that's not an option, but I thought 4 is better than 3, so I used 4, and it completely screwed up some stuff I was trying to do. So 4, it says in the help that 4 honors some like textures and stuff like that. I'm not really sure what that means and have found no need for it, but I do know that 4 screws up my line work, so I usually use 3. If you can figure out what 4 does and you want to use it, then go for it. These I usually just leave as default. The transparency override, you can set stuff to be transparent up to a value of like 0.95, so 95% transparent. I don't really find that terribly useful, but you can play with that if you would like to. Convert undisplayed levels. As it is set up now with the box unchecked, if you have a level that is off, it won't bring it to Google Earth, so you can keep your file size down and keep your file cleaned up a little bit if you want to do that. So what you can do is leave this box unchecked, turn off all the levels you don't want to bring into Google Earth, and then do the export. The other option, if you check that, you can do the same thing. You can turn off everything you don't want, and when you bring it into Google Earth, it will look like that, but it will have, Google Earth has selectable levels, so you can turn levels on and off in Google Earth, so it'll bring over everything and just have it default to being turned off. So if you think you might have need for some levels, but you don't want to see them immediately, you could check that and turn them off, and then you'd have it available if you felt like that might be useful to you. I usually just leave it off. Convert custom line styles. If you turn that box on, it should drop all your ditch lines and guardrail and any custom line styles you have, like your sanitary sewer line, stuff like that. It should drop that and make it look like it looks in Microstation. That's going to increase your file size quite a bit, so if that's a concern and you don't need that, then don't use it, but I think it really helps. You'll end up with a whole bunch of gray lines on your imported Google Earth file if you don't use that. So we can uncheck these. I don't really want to bring rasters into Google Earth, so I'm just going to uncheck those. Open file after export should open Google Earth Pro after you hit the export button. And then the rest of this 3D render mode. This one's important here. It's going to come in, it's probably going to default to smooth when you open Microstation. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring in your smooth rendering to Google Earth. And if you're bringing in Linework, that's not what you want. It's going to bring in like your plan sheet will be a giant white blob or something. So you should either change it. I think you should, unless you're trying to do some sort of 3D rendering or something, change it to either from view or wireframe so that you're bringing in your line work and not filled in shapes. And then this is probably the most important setting. Google will bring in elevations. So if you're in a fill, you could set it to absolute, and you could set it to smooth and bring in your 3D rendered smooth view at the absolute elevation, and as long as you're in a fill, it'll look right and it'll lay over top of the Google Earth elevation data, and so that can be pretty cool. But there's no way to display cuts in Google Earth, so I don't find that terribly useful unless you're in a very specific situation. So what I usually am using this for is to get the line work to drape on top of Google Earth. So if you do relative to ground, if you have an elevation of like 800 on a point, it'll put it 800 feet above the ground, even though that Microstation, that's an absolute elevation. So I don't see a reason to hardly ever use relative to ground. I suppose you could do relative to ground, and then the altitude bias shifts it up. So suppose you could do, if all your elements were elevation 0, and then you could add an altitude bias of 1 meter and put all your points 1 meter above the ground if you wanted to. I'm not sure why you would, but the one I usually use is, I'm rambling at this point, apologize, is a flatten to ground. So, and once you do flatten to ground, this altitude bias, which shifts all your points up, is disregarded. It's just going to squash everything to the ground. And then this one is, if you're in the smooth view, you can convert some things to wireframe so that it shows up. But if you're in wireframe, then I'm not sure that's really critical. And then this next, we can go back to this later. This is more for bringing the imagery in. So I've got this box set up the way I want to be able to get my line work into Google Earth. So I'll hit OK. And now to do the export, and it's gonna bring in my cross sections and everything, but that's okay, just for demonstration purposes. So you'll want to make sure that your drawing looks like what you want Google Earth to look like. So I'll just go to this button here, Export Google Earth KML File. And you can put it in ProjectWise if you want. I'm just going to put it on the desktop, so I'll hit Cancel, and then go to Desktop, and we'll just call it the name of the file. Hit Save. It's creating the Google Earth KML file. Here's your progress bar. And so it opens Google Earth and places the graphics and zooms you into the spot where you are. We'll just zoom in here and take a look. You can see that my custom line styles came in. My sanitary looks like sanitary, my ditch looks like ditch. My default line style of my disturb limit did not come in right, but boy, I didn't expect it to. So that's what it looks like. If I go to a top view, you can see that it lines up pretty good with the aerial imagery. So that's pretty much it. You know, the big thing is making sure that you got the settings the way that you want them before you bring it in. You can see too it brings in all your text. So this can be really handy for people that don't read plans, for property owners and stakeholders, to see what the project is actually going to look like. You can look at our surveyed graphics and see how closely they line up with aerial photography. One thing too to mention, if you go to this layers bar, actually a couple things to mention. If you turn the terrain off, if you'll notice, as I'm moving the cursor, it's got the elevation that my cursor is at. If I turn terrain off, it takes it to 0, so it takes the 3D out of it, and I'm still in this. If you drill down to the level and right-click and go to Properties, my altitude is set to clamped to ground. So I took the terrain off, and so now everything's at 0, and I've just got an aerial photo with the graphics on top of it. If I turn the terrain back on, it brings it back up to around the elevation 800 or 900 where it is. So, and then you can see where we've got this list. It brings it in temporary places. You can right-click and save place as and make it something that's not temporary. But you can see everything is labeled like it is in Microstation. So you can turn off your center line. You can, you know, any level you want to turn off, you can turn off by just checking this box. So it can be a pretty handy tool. I think that's all I have on the Linework to Google Earth Pro. So Well, nope, there's one more thing, the datum factor, which can be kind of a bear. I'll show you that. I'll show you what I'm talking about there. Let me open a different file that had this issue. And Chris, I see a question that we've lost audio. Can you confirm whether or not you've got me still?
Still have you. Not that may be an individual problem. If anybody else is out there who's lost audio, please let us know, and maybe it might be an internet thing or something like that.
Okay. Well, we'll proceed. So this is a project that has a datum factor. I have not done the datum factor adjustment, so all my settings should still be set up the same way I left them. So I'm just going to export this to KML just to show you what it looks like. And I'm just going to call it not adjusted. And we'll see what it looks like. So I'm in the right county and I'm not in the right spot for some reason. So this is a datum factor thing. It's just close enough that I'm nervous. So if you get something like this, you have to investigate the plans. I went on here and wrote in giant red letters what my datum factor is, but you may have to investigate, look through the plan sheets, maybe the first plan sheet or something, or the coordinate control sheet, and try to find the datum factor that was used on the project. I'm going to go ahead and delete this so that when we bring it in corrected, we don't see a bunch of stuff we don't need to see. So if this is what you need to correct, what you're going to have to do is scale these graphics about the origin. All the graphics that you want to bring in, you'll have to scale about the origin by 1 over the datum factor. So the first thing I would do would be to save this so that you don't screw up your good data. So we'll call this PR menu datum adjustment. So I've got the adjusted file open so I can mess this up without fear. So what I'm going to do is Control A to select all, and then I'm going to go to my Microstation tools to the scale command, and I want to scale it by a set number, so I'm going to use active scale, and I'm going to do in here, it'll do the math in here for me, so I'll do 1 divided by, so I hit the / for divide by, and it popped up this box that it's going to do the math for me. And I'll type in 1.000006099 and hit enter. And so it did the math, and now it's asking me enter origin point to scale about. So I could have placed a line at 0, 0 and snapped to it. What I'm going to do is just type in xy equals 0, 0, and this is going to be the origin point for the scaling. And I'll hit enter, and you saw it move. So now none of these graphics are going to match up with your plan sheets and your survey and all that stuff, but it will lay over top of the aerial, hopefully. So let's try it. Go export, and I'm just going to put it back on the desktop, and I'll call it adjusted and hit save. And there it is. Looks much better. So if you have a datum factor, that's how you make the adjustment. It can be a little tricky. Another thing to point out on this project, if I go to geographic coordinate system, I'm in north zone. I already had that set up correctly. So it can be a bit of an investigation trying to figure out why it's coming in wrong. You know, if you have it set up in single zone, it'll be way off, and then so maybe you correct it to the right zone and then it's still a little bit off, then it's probably a datum factor thing. So that's that, but you know, looks like the other one. It just we're able to get it to come in right with the datum factor. So let's just delete that. Let's see. Let's go ahead and move forward. I think I addressed all those issues we had there. So the next thing will be Google Earth Pro Imagery into Microstation. The issues to watch for here are to watch your resolution. If you zoom out to the size of Kentucky in Google Earth and then capture the image, it'll bring in a picture at its maximum resolution of the state of Kentucky, and when you zoom in, you won't be able to see anything. So, but you know, if you zoom in to where your screen's only 100 feet wide, then you only have one picture that's 100 feet wide, and it'll be the maximum resolution, but you'll have 50 pictures to do a mile-long project or something. So you sort of have to find that balance between how good of a resolution you want versus file size and that kind of stuff. Also, there is a project-wise integration opportunity. I like to call things opportunities instead of problems, but there's a workaround for that too. So let's jump in and show you the process for this. I've got a pin here on the project I want to work on, and I'm just going to jump over here to project-wise and load up a new DGN file of this other project. Hey, look, forgot to delete the old stuff. Maybe I'm in a, yep, in a reference file. Apologies for that. You can tell I practiced at least. So this is a project that I want to get the Google Earth image for. So there's a button here that says Capture Google Earth Image, and that will bring in whatever your view is in Google Earth. So if we jump over to Google Earth, it will bring in exactly what's in this screen. If I have this minimized like that, it's going to bring in that size picture, or that's the picture it'll bring in. If you blow it up, I didn't spell Barberville right. That's interesting. So what I like to do is just maximize this, and so say that's the picture I want. I'm not sure it really matters. I like to make sure I'm rotated directly vertical, and then I like to double click on the N to get it to go north. And now it's going to bring in Colonel Ridge Road and 6 and 1075. So I'm going to turn off everything that I don't want to show up. So if I go down here to layers, I've turned off my place marks. I'll go down here to layers and turn off my borders and shading, my roads. Just one thing to note when you bring it in, it's going to bring in this stuff, and Google's pretty particular that they don't want you removing the accreditation for their pictures. So Just one thing to take note of. So I've got this view set up like I want, and so I'll jump back here to Microstation, and it's the fourth button over, capture Google Earth image, and enter data point to capture Google Earth image. And this is where it bombs on you if you have version 7.1. So it brings in this mesh, and this is wireframe mode. If I flip over, I'll go ahead and do it. If I flip over to smooth mode, you can see my picture. It's black and white. The workaround for the black and white is to go back to Google Earth Pro, and actually I showed you the black and white, but it works better if you don't flip to smooth mode first, because I'm going to have to close Microstation and reopen it now, but that's okay. Go back to here to Google Earth before you move the screen. So this is the same screen that Microstation captured. Go to File, Save Image, and go to, you're in Google Earth Pro, so you have access to the premium. Even though it's free, you still have access to the premium resolution now. Hit Save. And now, if you're in ProjectWise, you'll want to navigate to your PWWork folder. So it goes C, PWWork, your username, and then this number here, which corresponds, I'll bring my ProjectWise over here, 1084560 is the folder ID in ProjectWise. And you see 1084560. So you have to navigate to your ProjectWise folder. You have to find this picture, and then you have to save over it. So this is the black and white picture, and so I'm trying to save this color picture, so I just click on that. This is an old version of this attempt, so this is the one that you won't see this. There, now you don't see it. This is what you will see. It'll be the name of your DGN file and terrain capture 1. And so that's what I want to name it. I'll hit save. It's going to ask me if I want to replace it. I'll say yes. And so that's done. If you go back, it's still got the old stuff in its memory, so I'm just going to close. I'm going to close that and check it in. And then I'm just going to reopen that. And it should have replaced the old black and white picture with a new color picture. If you don't flip over to smooth mode, then it won't ever make the first connection. And so you can just do the replacement, flip over to smooth mode, and it should come in correctly. So there's my mesh. I'll flip over to smooth. And there it is in color. So it brings it in at the elevation with the terrain, so it's covering up my line work. If I go back here to my settings box that we were at earlier, we could also capture it as a B-spline surface if we captured it as a mesh. I like the mesh. So, but if you see this View Terrain button, if you untoggle that, it sends the picture down to 0. So one more thing to show you is the picture is smooth, but the drawing's wireframe. So if they're both in the same file, you can run into some problems. So one thing you can do, And I'll just go ahead and show this to you. You can save this. You could have done this in a separate file or whatever, but we'll call this image. So what we're going to do is just save this file so that we can have the picture in a different file. Then we can reference it and have the view we're working in be wireframe and have the reference be smooth. So what I'm going to do is, out of the image file, I'm just going to delete all the graphics. So now the only thing I have in this file, to my knowledge, is the picture. I'm just going to go back to my previous model. Now what I'm going to do when it gets this open is to delete the picture out of this, so I'll have all the graphics. So I'm deleting the mesh. So I have the graphics in this file. I'm going to change it back to wireframe. So see my filled in bridge. If when I was in smooth, my bridge looked filled in because it's a shape. My head walls look funny. My text boxes look funny. So I'll go back to wireframe. And then I'll go to references and I'll add in the image file that we just created. All this has in it is the image. And I'm just referencing it. So there it is. It comes in automatically in wireframe, but what I can do is click on image here, go to settings, presentation, and then change it from parent. So what this is telling it is use the display style of the file that I'm in. I don't want to do that. I want to force it to be smooth. And hit OK. And there it is. So now my reference is in smooth and my design file is in wireframe. If I take and turn off these two options, snap and locate, then it doesn't flash at me whenever my cursor touches the image. So now you could use this, you know. Another thing to notice about this imagery, it's high resolution, but it's not orthorectified. This one actually looks pretty vertical. Sometimes, well, you can kind of see the front of the house there. So this picture may have been taken from that direction. This doesn't always line up with your survey data exactly. So I would not set property lines and locate buildings and treat this like survey quality photography. So be very careful when you're using it to, you know, don't develop your existing manuscript with this imagery or anything like that. But it can be very useful, you know, if on the 1 meter, if the whole area is very blurry, to communicate to property owners and stakeholders what your design looks like. I think, let me look at my notes here. Oh, the last thing I wanted to talk about was that project-wise integration opportunity. So I'll close this file. It's going to ask me to check it in. And so theoretically, I'm saving everything. And I'll just go ahead and clean up my screen a little bit. I'll show you my project-wise screen. And I'm just going to refresh this folder. So the file we were working in was 11-1075 Alt1 plan. So if I've got somebody else in my office working on this, when they open this file right now, they're going to see a yellow mesh. And the way that the pictures work is that they are attached through materials. And the material has a link to my PWWork folder that has this folder ID. And as you can see, it did not upload the image to the ProjectWise server. If I drill down to see PWWork, Troy Woodyard, and I'm looking for 1084560. Here's my PWWork folder, and it was this file right here, Alt1 Plan Terrain Capture. This is not automatically uploaded to the ProjectWise server. I put in a change request with Bentley, so maybe one day it will be. But for now, if you're working on ProjectWise, take and just drag this here. And there's the JPEG. So now when someone else in my office opens this, it still will not show up. So the last thing you have to do is whenever you are on a different computer or somebody else is working on it, before you open this file, click this image and right click and hit copy out. And what that'll do is that'll copy this file down to your PWWork folder. That way when Microstation opens this file, the link that it's pointing to in a PWWork folder will exist, and then it should come in right. And some of these little workarounds and stuff, if you have any issues with them, please call us and we'll try to help you work through them. At this point though, I think that's all I have. I'm ready for some questions. Hopefully I'll be able to answer them. If not, maybe we can do some research for you.
Great, thanks, Troy. Actually, we're going to try a couple of different things here for questions. You can actually go to your questions tab, and something to note is if you look in your questions tabs, there's actually quite a few people in there that are throwing in tips that may or may not be mentioned in the webinar, which is greatly appreciated. So that's some place that you can actually learn, and you can ask questions there as if you like. One of the other places you can do is if you look in your upper left-hand part of the control panel, there is a little yellow hand. If you click on that hand, it'll actually allow us to see your hand being held up, and we can actually unmute you, and you can actually ask the question with your voice if you have a mic. If anybody wants to try that out, that's a new thing for us. You know, if you want to be so bold, that would be great. So if you have any questions now, go ahead and ask them, and we'll get Troy to answer them. No questions? None at all? Troy, you're getting off easy, buddy. Oh, here we go. Looks like we have a question here. On an iPad, we are running into it not displaying all the lines. Any troubleshooting ideas there?
Nope. Sorry. I wonder, I don't know, maybe if she could be more specific about what it's not showing up. I wonder too if it shows up if it's showing up in the KMZ correctly on the computer, but it's not showing up correctly on the iPad. I have no idea. I know people are using that on the iPad. I haven't personally done that very often. Sorry, I can't help with that one.
I actually have both Google product or Android products and iPad products, and nary the two shall meet very well because they're direct competitors. Things that I can get on my Android very well sometimes don't work very well on an iPad, and vice versa. So that may be the issue. But yeah, if anybody can figure that out and send us the answer, that would be appreciated.
Also, if they want to give us a call and show us exactly what it's doing, we can take a look at it. But maybe without some more info, I'm not sure we'll be able to solve it anyway. But without some more info, I don't really know what to suggest.
Any more questions out there? I don't see anybody holding up their hand or anything like that, so nobody's going to try that today, it looks like. Okay, looks like we have a tip there from Timothy Schoen. He says it has to do with Google Earth getting rid of My Map and using Maps Engine. All of My Map disappeared. Apparently he's tried it, so apparently it sounds like a preference and software conflict.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah. Again, if anybody has any other suggestions out there or knows more about Apple and Android stuff, that would be great. Any other questions? Okay, I guess we'll close out, and I'll remind everybody to please answer the survey questions at the end. And want to thank you for attending, and please join us for the next webinar. Thank you so much.